Hi, it's John from Crafts by John UK. Today I'm going to show you how to make or lay out this card. So I've made an interesting background with smushing, distress inks, and then I've also used a Christmas stencil to stencil lightly over with some silver gilding polish, just to create an interesting background. And then I'll talk about the different components. So in this card we have our background component, which is obviously quite attractive. We don't want to cover it up too much. I've then used a die to cut this beautiful bauble thing out of silver paper, which I lay on, obviously, the background. I found this gauze, sort of aquamarine-y, kind of bluey ribbon, which I've used. And then also a Merry Christmas sentiment, which I put at the bottom. If you want to see how I do this and the rationale behind the layout, watch the video. So again, today we're talking about layout. I've got this rather nice, actually, let me just zoom out a little bit more. This rather nice background that I created with smushing, I think it was distress ink, in two different colours, a blue and a grey. I used a piece of just clear plastic. You can see it's quite stained. Literally you ink on here, you spray on here, and then you smush and you get this quite nice effect. So I did that to create the background, and basically then once I'd got my blue and I'd got my grey, what I then did is I used a stencil, and I think that you can just see that in the light. I then went over with some silver gilding polish and through the stencil created this nice effect. Now, because I've got such a nice background and because it's so dominant, I can't really do much else with it. I can't really stamp easily on it because the ink won't really take properly. I could stamp, cut out and mount on it, but what I'm thinking is to keep it quite simple. So what I've got, I found this in my stash. It's a die, this is the die, and basically it's sort of like a Christmas bow with various baubles hanging down. So I'm thinking, in terms of layout, leave this area to speak for itself. As I've said in my other videos, negative space is good to the left and above. So in this instance, because this is hanging down, I would put this at the top, so I'd leave this space. And then I want a sentiment, obviously. So I've also found a similar Merry Christmas, just a really basic die cut, and I've cut it in silver. So I'm thinking this is probably the layout I would go for. Now, whilst that's nice, and whilst we've got an interesting background, we've got some bright silver, which draws your attention, I'll probably darken the edges slightly before I mount it on a card. It kind of needs something else. So what I found is this ribbon. I've got a roll of this. I think this came from, I think it was the range. It's just a decorative ribbon. I use quite a lot of gauze type ribbons in my card making because obviously it lets the background still be seen. So what I would do on this, probably veer to the right because, as I've said, negative space to the left or empty space to the left. I would probably mount, I'd put the ribbon on the card, I'd stick it on the back so it kind of holds it in place. Obviously I've got nowhere to really hide sticky. I could, if I use double-sided tape, it only leaves like a mild coloration behind. But I'll probably put the ribbon on and then I'll put that there, and then I'll just put the Merry Christmas sort of centered in the bottom. So that's probably the layout I'll go for. And you can see why I've made those choices. We've got a busy background, so we don't want to cover that up because we've spent all that time creating that lovely effect. Just that little bit of blue ribbon adds a bit of interest. We put this die cut on top. That obviously draws your eye down the card, and the sentiment is at the bottom. So the closing statement is almost the sentiment. So I will make this and I'll show you what it looks like when I've done it. But I just wanted to talk through those design choices and the kind of why we do what we do, because I know a lot of people struggle with layout. I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I can kind of only share what I've found when I've made cards over the years. Obviously I've sped this up, but you can see what I'm doing. I'm sticking some double-sided tape. I'm affixing the ribbon to the back, roughly lining it up with the front, just making sure it's straight and level and parallel to the edge. Then I'm putting some double-sided tape all around the edges, ready to stick it down as a layer. I'm sticking just normal PVA glue at little dot points on the die cut. It's quite intricate. Don't need glue on every single bit, but basically just make sure you've got enough to adhere it. Use kitchen towel or a piece of scrap paper to just kind of press down on it, and any bits that don't get the glue, just touch up. You just need a few points really to stick it down. It's always quite tricky sticking dies or anything on top of ribbon, but anyway, it can be done. Did the same with the sentiment, and then what I did is I put it under a pile of books just for a few minutes just to flatten it. I then got some smoothies with some residual distress ink on them and just went around the edge and darkened the edge. I always do that. I like my edges to be coloured. And then took some blue paper, decided which colour, kind of a mid blue, and then stuck that layer down and trimmed the paper to match. I always do that rather than trying to get it in the middle of a piece of cut paper. And then I simply mounted it on a DL card blank, so a 9 by 20 centimetre card blank, with some double-sided tape just to get it in position. I did the bunny ears trick, so you can kind of wiggle it, just get a bit of wiggle room. There you go, done. So here's the finished card. You can see it looks quite nice now. I've obviously backed it with some blue, and then I've mounted it on a 20 by 9 centimetre card base. It's quite nice. It's simple, but you see all the colour, all the lovely texture. You've got the contrast of the rough silver with the smooth foil of the die cut, and the little Merry Christmas down the bottom, and the little ribbon just adds it a nice finishing effect. So if you've enjoyed that and the logic behind how I did it and why I did it, check out my YouTube channel. There are other technique videos on there, as well as card making from start to finish. And if you like it, maybe give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so you get notified when I post new content. Thanks for watching and have a good day.